I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them blue.
Welcome to Childhood Cancer Talk Radio, powered by Jack's Angels, where we talk about your experiences, advocacy news, research, and today's heroes for kids. We are here to bring hope to the unthinkable but real experience of a child diagnosed with cancer. Jack's Angels' advocacy mission is to provide a voice for children with cancer to effect change for a more hopeful future for those to come. Childhood Cancer Talk Radio starts right now. Here is your host, Janet Demeter.
Welcome to Childhood Cancer Talk Radio on TogiNet.com. I'm Janet Demeter, your host, and it's an exciting time right now in the world of childhood cancer advocacy. There's activism in the air. There's a critical mass of collective awareness for the inadequacies in research funding for pediatric cancer that many of us have been hoping for. That tipping point so necessary for change to occur for every battle in public awareness. So, what change exactly am I talking about, you might be thinking, especially if you're new to listening to this particular show. Well, Childhood Cancer Talk Radio is dedicated to providing a forum of support and discussion for those affected by childhood cancer, of research information, advocacy news, and a sense of community for all of us who are in some way involved in the struggle for our children to be prioritized in our medical research system. For those not directly affected, we provide education, awareness, and an understanding that the difficulties for families of children with cancer reflect deeper problems in our society that affect all of us, whether or not we're aware. And most importantly, we strive to speak out for our most vulnerable citizens, our children with cancer and other so-called rare diseases. Many parents take on the mantle of advocacy for their child who has passed on to fulfill his or her dream. Some take it on to set about righting some wrongs they've experienced along the way to help others currently battling. And most importantly, we speak out for the inadequacies in research funding for kids and the unacceptable realities that this creates for these children and their families right now. So, we repeat statistics about childhood cancer and the most deadly brain tumors and continue to combat misinformation and support clarity in the way we categorize and understand childhood cancer. For example, many still do not know that cancer is the leading cause of death in children in the United States. This is after accidents and injuries, and that only 4% of our tax dollars allotted for cancer research with the National Cancer Institute targets pediatric cancers as a whole. For the leading cause of cancer-related death in children, brainstem glioma, there has literally been no change in prognosis or treatment protocol for decades, and the families have been expected to accept that there are no solutions because their lives are basically insignificant to research investors. The value of our children's lives in this equation is not afforded the priceless status it deserves. No. Instead, we are forced to fight for this recognition for them, to fight for our children's lives, to fight for the future of our planet, because sometimes it seems like no one else is. But few understand the situation better than my guest today, Childhood Cancer Talk Radio's Hero of the Week, Paul Miller of Littleton, Colorado. If you're just tuning in, you're listening to Childhood Cancer Talk Radio on TogiNet.com, where kids come first for the cure. Now, Paul Miller is extraordinary in that he has not himself lost a child to cancer and demonstrates that this is not a prerequisite for devotion to this cause. He has volunteered for St. Baldrick's Foundation now for over 12 years, an organization dedicated not only to research for a cure, but research focused on preventing the lifelong damage that results from surgeries, radiation, and chemotherapies given while young bodies and brains are just developing. Even during treatment, kids face all kinds of side effects, some very uncomfortable, others life-threatening. That's why St. Baldrick's also funds research to improve care for patients. One of their most common fundraising and activist activities is the head shave. And Paul has been a shavee, an MC, a shavee recruiter, a volunteer event organizer, and just about everything besides a barber. He speaks publicly about childhood cancer, self-development, as well as business. He's also a regular platelet donor at Children's Hospital of Colorado and was the 2014 Platelet Donor of the Year. And in 2015, Paul was one of 12 National Hall of Fame blood donors. About 6 years ago, he began a Facebook support group for families of children with DIPG, perhaps the most deadly pediatric cancer for which there are currently no solutions to its terminal nature. Paul is vice president of Piper Electric Company, Inc., and single father of one son, Adam, who is 27. Paul, it's truly an honor to have you with us today. Welcome. Are you there?
I'm listening till then. I'm going, wow, thank you very much. Those awesome words from an awesome lady. Thank you.
Oh, I'm so glad to have you with me today. This is great. So,
yeah, it's everything that you're saying is just so true about childhood cancer. And sometimes, the families have been so involved in just the treatments and such with their children that they need another voice.
Yes.
And I think that's what I'm supposed to be doing.
Well, and you do it very well, Paul, and with such heart. And listeners, just so you know, I've sort of met Paul virtually online with my activities on Facebook, and he's just a constant source of concern, of caring, of sharing important information, constant work for kids with cancer. Constant. I mean, some of the children that he shared with me, some of the stories have motivated me at times to not give up with my work when I thought mine was so hard. You see these kids and the way they fight for their lives, and it's sort of like a flare out of, they are the message that love is the only truth. And to stand in that with the bravery that they do over and over and over again, it deserves a fight from us. It really does.
One of the things that I've noticed about these children that are in treatment is what you just said is one, they never ever give up, and they never ever want to make it about themselves. They are most worried about their siblings, their family, and they're not really worried about themselves because they figure they're going to get through this. They're just amazing, amazing children.
There definitely is a special quality, for sure. Well, Paul, could you tell me a little bit about your earlier life, and was there anything in particular in your early experiences in life that you think kind of set you up for this, or was there any one experience or something that you were involved with that you think kept you open to this?
I think there's a time in everybody's life where they think that they have to do something. They have to give back. They have to, something's nagging at them. And for a couple years, and this was early on when St. Baldrick's was just barely starting here in the Denver metro area, that I had heard about this event. And it was my third year when I heard about the event again. And it was about the day before the event, and my controller in my company, she was going through breast cancer, and the day of the event was going to be the last day of her treatments, and she had gone bald. And so I decided, well, I can do it in solidarity for her and see if I could raise a few bucks. And I decided about 4 hours left in my day, I was going to go down and do this thing the next day, but I needed to raise some money. And I raised about $1,600 in about 4 hours and was the single top fundraiser for that event.
Wow.
And yeah, so it was kind of, it was a novelty thing, I'd have to admit, because I didn't really catch on to it. I got a couple people involved the next couple years, and then everything changed my fourth year. And my fourth year was when I started my first team, and about 2 weeks prior to the event, one of my teammates called me up, and he had signed up him and his son, and they had found out that his one classmate, kindergartner, had got diagnosed with stage 3 Hodgkin's lymphoma. And then it became really real. And that year that I started my team, I had they started a deal where you honored children, and every child in Colorado that was on the list I honored through my team or through myself. And the families would get notified, and your contact information went out there, and then I started getting phone calls from parents that wanted to tell me their child's story.
Wow.
And when you're sitting there in a office for 45 minutes listening to how a little girl who had donated her locks of love in November got diagnosed with ALL, which is acute lymphoblastic leukemia in February, and 10 days later she was gone.
Oh my gosh.
It's kind of a wake-up call.
Wow.
And so I did, more research on the foundation and found that at that time it was about 83% of all the funds raised went to childhood cancer research, and they were running at about a 3 to 4% administrative, and the rest was what it cost for fundraising. And to this day, 12 years later, they're still running around that 4% administrative. Fundraising has cost them a little bit more. And there's probably, I think around 78% of all the funds go to childhood cancer research. And they're the largest private funder for research. So if you think about that they raised $37 million, and they're the top private funder for research of childhood cancer, that's telling you that there's a major problem in here, because $37 million is nothing when it comes to focusing funds for research for childhood cancer.
You're not kidding. And I'm glad you gave me those statistics, because I had just read that too, and I thought that was really quite exceptional. In just a minute here, Paul, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, I'd like to continue talking about St. Baldrick's. To our listeners, we are fortunate to be speaking with my favorite heroes for kids, Paul Miller of Littleton, Colorado, advocate and public speaker for childhood cancer. We'll return to our conversation after these messages from our sponsors right here on TogiNet.com. Don't go away.
Stay tuned. Janet will be right back with more on Childhood Cancer Talk Radio, where kids come first for the cure.
Do you ever wonder if you're the only woman who runs errands in her yoga pants so it will look like she went to the gym? Or how about the only mom who feeds her kids raw cookie dough? Or are you the only one who cooks her family cold cereal for dinner? Do you need more laughter and less loudness? More self-love and less self-loathing? More joy and less judgment? You're not alone. Come to the living room, a place where we get comfy, candid, and confident together. Come seeking sanctuary and leave feeling renewed. We're saving a seat for you. Give yourself some living room today.
Hear about the hound dog that participated in a 13-mile race in Elkmont, Alabama? According to Runner's World, the 2.5-year-old hound dog named Ludivine was just horror-gorbling in her backyard when she heard the runners lining up for the trackless train trek half marathon in the distance. Somehow she found her way to the starting line and began sprinting alongside the other runners. According to Keith Henry, the winner of the race, Ludivine cut in front of him and the other runners several times. They had to be careful not to trip over the pooch. As it turned out, Ludivine crossed the finish line in 7th place with a time of 1 hour and 33 minutes. According to her owner, that was a pretty impressive showing for a normally Schaberlacher dog. Schaberlacher is another word for lazy.
It's marching neighborhood.
I'm Carolyn Davidson, and you can have fun challenging your words you never heard vocabulary with my free app, Too Funny for Word.
Welcome back to to more great conversation on Childhood Cancer Talk Radio, because every child's life deserves hope. Here's Janet.
And we're back. This is Janet Demeter with Childhood Cancer Talk Radio, powered by Jack's Angels Foundation for Awareness and Research for DIPG and Advocacy Mission for Children with Cancer. Today, I'm speaking with Paul Miller in Colorado, longtime advocate for children with cancer. Paul, before the break, we were discussing your involvement with St. Baldrick's and how that began, and what a great organization they are, and that insofar as private funders of childhood cancer research, they're up there at the top with, what, 34 million, you said?
Yeah, I think last year we did 37 or 38. I have no clue where we're at right now. The year is young. A lot of events are going on right now. I can only say that our event, though not all the money has been counted or is in yet, we'll probably, we'll be adding about $500,000 to the coffers, just our one single event. And there's in the neighborhood of 1,200 to 1,400 events every year. So,
well, there's got to be some talent behind that. That's success. I mean,
well, considering the first event that I ever went to, we shaved 30 heads that day. And on March 11th, we shaved over 500, and over 100 of them were women.
Wow. Jeez, that's incredible. I mean, one of the gals who I was connected with around the time my son was diagnosed, her daughter, who at the time when I met her, I think she was just going into college, she was already shaving her head and was a precocious young writer. And so I became involved or learned about St. Baldrick's from them. And so then it started popping up everywhere. And the last time I went to Washington, D.C. for advocacy, they were on the panel at the Summit for the Congressional Caucus for Childhood Cancer. One of the strong voices for advocacy for our kids. So you can locate them, you folks out there, on the web at St. Baldrick's, that's stbaldricks.org, and get involved. You can help.
Right, and shaving heads isn't for everybody, right. And we all get that. So they started a new thing, Do What You Want, where you can set up an event, a golf tournament, a poker tournament, auction or whatever, and have an event where you don't have to necessarily shave your head in solidarity for these children. You can do something else and raise funds, and it still goes to the great cause.
Wow, well, that's good to know, because, I really want to be supportive, but I really don't want to shave my head. And you'd think I would, but maybe someday I'll want to do that. But
well, I can tell you this: my mother did it 3 years in a row.
Did she?
She's 80, and because my mom was having a 60th anniversary this year, she decided she did not want to do that. So my little sister ponied up and shaved her head.
Wow.
So,
well, when I'm finally ready to let go, I have really long hair, of the length of my hair that was there when my son was around. It's weird how we hang on to things, because otherwise it probably would have been off a long time ago. But, us grieving parents and the stages we go through, it's like, coming up as maybe an imminent move for us. And the house where we are is where my son spent almost all of his life and where he died. And so these things are really great for people that don't have stuff like that. For people, I can see how attractive it is for people who maybe aren't directly affected or are, but haven't had a death or something. I don't know. But for whatever reason, I'm hung up on my hair. There it is.
Well,
long story.
And you know what? I totally get that, because being a father that has not gone through any of that, have not gone through having to take a child to treatment, have not buried my own child, even though I've been to way too many funerals of children that have passed. I get that. You have enough on your hands to think about anything else. And, you know, a lot of times what I've seen when a child passes, you know, the family is really lost at what to do now. And so that's why I feel I have to stay in the fight. And even though I've gotten really close to quite a few children that have passed away, and trust me, I have had my days where I thought I can't do this anymore. But then I think back to, you know, somebody like little Justin Miller or Delaney Clements who just passed, and I've got to say they never gave up. I can't give up either.
Well, that picture of Delaney, and I have it in a couple places on my website, but that picture of Delaney that you put out where she's at the NCI building, there she is with her little shaved head in a coat, huddled up with a sign that says, I'm worth more than 4% NCI, and not another soul in sight. And then there's a little sign that says no tobacco or something, or I don't know.
Right.
It's just so poignant. It's like etched in my brain. And that at certain times, you know, when I go to Washington, I'm kind of an activist, and I wear wings with ribbons on them for deceased children because they don't have a voice there. So it empowers me to feel like I'm going there for them. And sometimes it's almost too scary. It's way out of my comfort zone. And I think of that picture, and I'm like, what? Come on. Why are you here? You know?
She stood out there in the freezing cold at the entry of NCI and, the National Institute of Health, NIH. And as the people were walking in through the secured gates to get in there, and it's interesting that people aren't looking at her.
Wow.
And to me, they need to look.
Yeah.
And they need to look deep. And they need to look in the eyes of these children because we're their only hope.
You said it right there. We are. And if you're aware and you feel something, that's your message. That's your calling. Some people don't have a calling. That's okay. But if you see it, you're aware of it, you get the message, it does something to you, that's your calling. Don't squelch it. Go for it. You know,
exactly.
So I try to tell people.
You know, your purpose will find you, and you know, it may not be this, but be involved in something. And I can't see anything more important to be involved in than something that is the number one killer of our children in the United States, and we're doing nothing about it.
It's true, Paul. I mean, it'll be coming up in my advocacy news report that's coming. We have a really good piece of legislation on the floor right now. It's kind of a composite of all the ones that died before us. And the one thing that's missing after looking at it and reading through, and it's excellent, but nowhere does it mention or bring up the need to prioritize our children in the grant process with the NCI. Nowhere. The only thing that does that is a little awareness bill. And I asked, because I'm going to Action Days on the Hill in May, I asked a larger group, you know, would you support this? They were like, well, in spirit we will, but it's not on our list. So it's not real law. I'm like,
so what does that mean? Does that mean...
It starts a conversation. It points something out. It's awareness. It's important, you know. So, I hate to go back to Gabriella Miller's statement before she passed. Oh, please do.
That talk is BS, and we need action.
That's right.
And this came. I think what was she 9, 8 or 9?
Yeah.
And you know, she passed I think, a couple weeks later from brainstem tumor.
It was DIPG.
Yeah, and when you sit there and you hear that from a little kid, yeah, you can sign all the little pieces of paper that you want to sign and do something that's just a feel-good thing. But until you really make it happen, you really make those numbers go up, you really make that 3.8%, you're giving them credit for 0.2% that they're not doing by saying 4%. So even if you doubled it and said 8%, okay, we're going to give you 8%, it's still not enough.
My phone dies at 8%, right? I mean, come on.
Exactly.
Yeah, we had her mom on here, and I want to have her back because they have to refight again every year for the First Kids Act, which allocates 12 point something million a year for certain studies, which is helpful. Okay, it was just very helpful. I'm glad they did it, but we still need these numbers to be addressed. I'm with you all the way on that.
So if you go back to your 12 point something million that they're allocating,
right?
Okay. When I sit there and I say the largest private funder of childhood cancer research is St. Baldrick's, and they're funding $37 million or something like that. Oh, what's this 12 million? How about 120 million?
Thank you. We need at least 1 0. We need 2 zeros. I mean, when there was a crisis at the border, they threw $3 billion over there, and the senators got on saying, "Oh yeah, that's no problem for us to do." Why that? HELL, can't we do that for our children? Why?
Exactly.
That's my question. Oh dear. And with that, Paul, we'll return to our conversation after these messages from our sponsors at TogiNet.com. You're listening to Childhood Cancer Talk Radio, powered by Jack's Angels Foundation, Pediatric Brain Tumor Awareness and Support, and Advocacy for Children with Cancer. Jack's Angels is a 501c3 charitable organization since 2013. For more information about our mission, visit www.jacksangels.org. Our conversation with advocate and this week's Hero for Kids, Paul Miller, continues after these messages and our advocacy news portion of the program here at Childhood Cancer Talk Radio. Stay tuned for exciting events and more in-depth conversation after this.
Stay tuned. Janet will be right back with more on Childhood Cancer Talk Radio, where kids come first for the cure.
Secret Cuisines and Sacred Rituals is a quest, a place, and a feast. Join host Vilasi Venkatachalam every week to explore myths, mystique, old medicine, and brilliant modern solutions through a dazzling kaleidoscope of cuisines, cultures, and cures. This is the place where tribes gather, strangers and familiars, to be memory keepers and makers of our evolving, enduring, evergreen, spoken legacy of wisdom and ingenuity. In Vilasi's words, when we do old things in new ways and new things in old ways, we paint with an inspired palette, weave our own healing traditions, and become our own guru. Vilasi is a troubadour of secret cuisines and sacred rituals. She collects stories of wisdom, ingenuity, and grit. She believes wellness and transformation happen when you stand at the threshold of delight and discovery. She displays her hidden penchant for drama when she leads the safari at the supper club. Her favorite pastime is to extol the marvels of cuisines, cultures, and cures. To her audience in workplaces, seminars, and salons, her mantra is, be your own guru. She is a biochemist, botanist, and alchemist who likes to churn delightful, useful things from a brew of art and science, ancient and evolving, old medicine, and new cures. Join Vilasi every Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, only here on the Woohoo Radio Network.
It's words you never heard.
Did you hear about the hound dog that participated in a 13-mile race in Elkmont, Alabama? According to Runner's World, the 2.5-year-old hound dog named Ludivine was just horb-gorbling in her backyard when she heard the runners lining up for the trackless train trek half marathon in the distance. Somehow she found her way to the starting line and began sprinting alongside the other runners. According to Keith Henry, the winner of the race, Ludivine cut in front of him and the other runners several times. They had to be careful not to trip over the pooch. As it turned out, Ludivine crossed the finish line in 7th place with a time of 1 hour and 33 minutes. According to her owner, that was a pretty impressive showing for a normally Schaberlacher dog. Schaberlacher is another word for lazy.
It's words you never heard.
I'm Carolyn Davidson, and you can have fun challenging your words you never heard vocabulary with my free app, Too Funny for Words.
You'll always have my shoulder when you cry.
Welcome back to more great conversation on Childhood Cancer Talk Radio, because every child's life deserves hope. Here's Janet.
And welcome back. I'm Janet Demeter, your host for Childhood Cancer Talk Radio, where every child is a life, not a number, on TogiNet.com. Today's show is powered in part by Jack's Angels Foundation's advocacy mission to raise awareness for the urgent need for pediatric cancer research, as witnessed by the many families who have been told or who have discovered repeatedly now for decades that there are no solutions for their child because the numbers aren't great enough for investors. Do you think parents should have this experience? I personally work for the day when this is no longer a common experience and our medical research system be governed by laws that protect the value of our children's lives. But it all starts with awareness, and this is why advocacy is so important. And now for advocacy news. Nancy Goodman of Kids vs. Cancer just weeks ago during our interview with Maddie Miracle Foundation was on the Hill speaking to the Senate Committee on Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs in support of several initiatives and acts needing important updates and reinstatements to help connect patients to new and potentially life-saving treatments, and Kids vs. Cancer's Compassionate Use Navigator, as this system will help the parents of dying children have more time with them. Trying to jump through the bureaucratic hoops of compassionate care when your child is dying is terrible indeed. Go to kidsvcancer.org for more information on these important legislative developments involving the reinstatement of the 21st Century Cures Act, amending the Pediatric Research Equity Act to take into account scientific developments, with the Kids Innovative Drugs Initiative ensuring opportunities for pediatric research. Again, that's www.kidsvcancer.org. Our recent guest CEO of the Children's Cause, George Dahlman, encourages all listeners concerned with advocacy to visit the Children's Cause for Children's Cause for Cancer Advocacy website at www.childrenscause.org. The Children's Cause leads in providing a voice in Congress, the administration, and government agencies for parents and advocates around the United States. Vice President Biden has just opened an interactive Facebook page for you to let him know what's on your mind about Moonshot. Visit facebook.com/Vice President Biden. I personally was very encouraged with the Moonshot Initiative speech. However, after receiving some of the first briefings about it, I was disheartened to see childhood cancers mentioned briefly at the very end of the announcements, along with the very rare cancers and diseases. It seemed like business as usual and a sort of political whitewash of the most important goals for our advocacy work, namely increased consideration for our children. I really want to be wrong about this. I'm hoping that updated briefings will bring fresh and surprisingly hopeful news, and you will be the first to know. And now, for legislation. The childhood cancer advocacy movement needs your support. The leading cause of cancer-related death in children has been systematically neglected by the medical research system for decades. The only way our laws change to accommodate public demand and public need is for that public to express this to their representatives. That's how representative democracy works. Put it to use. Why? Childhood cancer legislation has a history of disappearing. Please support the following two bills currently in the House of Representatives. They're both important and both need votes. The first is gaining votes, but there's no reason why it shouldn't have all signatures. The STAR Act expands upon previous bills in a comprehensive manner. The Childhood Cancer Survivorship, Treatment, Access, and Research Act would expand opportunities for childhood cancer research, improve efforts to identify and track childhood cancer incidents, to enhance the quality of life for childhood cancer survivors, that is, and ensure publicly accessible expanded access policies that provide hope for patients who have run out of options. To access your representative's contact information, visit at the House, www.house.gov/representatives/find. And in the Senate, that's www.senate.gov/index. The awareness resolution, although it doesn't allocate funds or legislate actions, that's HRES 586, begins the conversation about increased priority for our kids and the low survival rate cancers, and for there to be some accountability. This is not directly stipulated, as in the STAR Act or any other cancer legislation supported by big advocacy groups. However, it was present in the previous bills that failed. Pay attention, people. The most recent House resolution is HRES 586 and needs your support. Sometimes an awareness resolution is just the perfect way to start people talking about an important idea that has been neatly evaded for a long time. Chad and Jack's DIPG resolution, calling for a National Awareness Week for DIPG and its thousands of departed heroes, and brave kids currently fighting to stay alive, and more awareness for the neglect of pediatric cancer in our medical research system. Using diffuse intrinsic pontine glioma as an example, we learn how the second most common pediatric brain tumor is responsible for the majority of brain tumor deaths in children each year, yet there's been no progress in its terminal prognosis in over 40 years, with an average of 20,000 years of life lost each year. HRES 586 calls for more consideration of low survival rate cancers and years of life lost in the research grant process with the National Cancer Institute. To follow this bill, visit jacksangels.org advocacy page. You can find all the show's advocacy information at jacksangels.org on this page, and activism information at runfordipg.org. Please encourage your reps to sign this bill. Until we begin letting our wishes be known to the Congress, the President, and the NCI, nothing will change. Here's a news flash. April 20th to 24th, the historic 200-mile activist run for HRES 586 stretches from Bakersfield, California, from the N8 Pediatric Brain Tumor Foundation through Santa Clarita, home of Jack's Angels, down to McKenna Clare Foundation in Huntington Beach, California. So if you're in SoCal and you want to run a leg or walk a leg, visit runfordipg.org for more information. Our show on April 21st will feature current activist runners for childhood cancer from across the country. The run exists to honor those children currently on cancer's death row, fighting to stay alive with DIPG. They deserve so much more from us. Also out here in California is the first ever Relay for Jack, benefiting pediatric brain tumor research at CCTR3, the Children's Cancer Therapy Development Institute, May 28th, 2016, in honor of the first National DIPG Awareness Week. Relay for Jack is an ultra-distance 8-hour relay for serious runners, advocates, and families alike wanting to raise funds for an innovative new research project for DIPG, the deadliest pediatric brain tumor. For more information, visit relayforjack.org. There are business sponsorships available. The bonuses include a TED-style talk for your company by Scientific Director Charles Keller of CCTR3, or a day as a scientist for 2 to 3 company employees at the lab. The lab is in Beaverton, Oregon. I don't know if plane tickets are covered. The National Brain Tumor Society is hosting its Action Days on the Hill, May 2nd and 3rd in Washington, D.C. To advocate for their legislative agenda, which includes the STAR Act, visit braintumor.org. The Alliance for Childhood Cancer will host this year's Childhood Cancer Action Days in Washington, D.C. on May 16th and 17th. Visit the Alliance on Facebook or on the web at allianceforchildhoodcancer.org. And finally, gosh, this is a long list. CureFest 2016, a national movement, begins with the first steps September 17th and 18th, 2016. Don't miss this event, also in Washington, D.C., if helping our kids with cancer is important to you. CureFest provides a supportive environment where people from all walks of life join together with a common purpose. You're not alone. CureFest is a great way to meet others who walk this path, network, and learn about more possibilities for your role in the movement. And now I gratefully return to our conversation with Childhood Cancer Talk Radio's Hero of the Week, Paul Miller, advocate for children with cancer and their families, platelet donor, and businessman from Littleton, Colorado. Paul, before the news break, we were discussing a number of things, including St. Baldrick's activity in Washington, the fact that it's the leading contributor in the private sector to research, yet the numbers are not really that boastable when you consider, well, it is for St. Baldrick's, but compared to the little that the government puts in for our kids, compared to its quite vast budget, it's really rather shocking.
It's also shocking when I sit there and I speak to people and they tell me that they would rather have their tax dollars not go to any type of funding. They'd rather have it go through a private sector provider than the government. And I didn't have an answer for that. That was kind of confusing to me that they would say that, and so. I asked him about, or would you do a donation to St. Baldrick's? Well, I'm really not interested in doing that either. So, I think we just have to continue to keep the awareness going. Certainly there are not only foundations out there, which I won't mention any names, that take in an awful lot of money, and they're also subsidized by the federal government as well. And that, to me, is bothersome because their research dollars are very little than, even noticeable in the scale of things.
Well, they pretty much mirror the big guys. They're like a carbon copy almost, and it's supposed to be a charity. That really bothers me.
And it should bother a lot of people. When you sit there and I speak to people about this all the time, that most children, when diagnosed, are stage 3, stage 4.
Right.
Okay, stage 4 is pretty much saying, well, you're in the run for your life, and chances are you're not going to make it. Stage 3, you might have a chance. You rarely hear that a child's been diagnosed in a stage 1 or a stage 2 early diagnosis because there isn't any type of screenings like there are for prostate cancer, breast cancer, colon cancer, et cetera, adult cancers, because they don't have the research. So, you find a cause, you find the cure, but you can't do any of that without funding.
And we'll be right back with more of that in just a moment from our TogiNet sponsors. Thank you, Paul.
Stay tuned. Janet will be right back with more on Childhood Cancer Talk Radio, where kids come first for the cure.
Congratulations on being the proud owner of an adorable, soft, cuddly, sweet-smelling, smiling, cooing, hungry, tired, gassy, screaming little bundle of joy. So now what? Where's the owner's manual for this thing? Where are my instructions? Right here. It's Baby and Toddler Instructions with Blythe Lipman on TogiNet.com. Infant care specialist Blythe Lipman has worked with babies for over 20 years and works extensively with new parents, providing workshops, in-home visits, tips, and daily phone calls to ease those frazzled nerves. With Baby and Toddler Instructions, you can get the advice you need on how to survive and enjoy your baby's first year. For more information on Blythe and how she can help you, go to babyinstructions.com. From 32 ways to stop a baby from crying to 14 ways to get a baby to eat and so much more. It's Baby and Toddler Instructions with Blythe Lipman on TogiNet.com.
A new study finds the happiest couples sleep the closest together, as in less than an inch apart. A survey of 1,000 couples found that 86% of those who kept such close perimeters reported they were satisfied with their relationship. Only 66% of couples who slept 30 inches apart or more reported being completely happy in their marriage. What's the word for getting up on the wrong side of the bed? Metutalipia. Another predictor of relationship happiness is touch. While 94% of couples who made physical contact throughout the night reported a happy relationship, just 68% of couples who kept their distance did the same. What's the word for the semi-conscious state between sleep and wakefulness? Hypnopompic.
It's words you never heard.
I'm Carolyn Davidson, and you can have fun challenging your words you never heard vocabulary with my free app, Too Funny for Words.
You'll always have my shoulder when you cry.
Welcome back to more great conversation on Childhood Cancer Talk Radio, because every child's life deserves hope. Here's Janet.
And we're back once more with Childhood Cancer Talk Radio, where kids come first for the cure, on TogiNet.com. I'm Janet Demeter, your host, speaking with our hero of the week, Advocate Paul Miller from Littleton, Colorado. Paul, before the break, we were talking about something very important, and that is most of the kids, when they're diagnosed, are late stage. And we don't have the same kind of diagnostic finesse for children that we do for adults, although I know sometimes we don't catch adults until, late stage onset as well. But statistically for kids, it's pretty extreme.
Well, and what happens is, they aren't feeling good. Oh, well, to go to the pediatrician, and, okay, you need a antibiotic, or you need this, and they're misdiagnosed for months. They could be misdiagnosed for over a year, and then all of a sudden, oh, you've got stage 4 neuroblastoma. And they don't have a shot at that. I mean, if they catch it early, and one thing with neuroblastoma, if they catch it early and they get it, their survivability is about 80%. Once a child relapses, the survivability is 0.
Wow, that's huge.
It's huge, but they do nothing with it because there's nobody interested in research. Well, there are, but it needs funding.
It seems like all of it does. Almost like the advances always come from mistakes or discovering something they had shelved that, we might be able to apply it here. Imagine what they do if they actually tried. Sorry.
Well, imagine what they did if they actually did research, which really was fabricated out of, for a child, instead of sitting there and saying, oh, well, this cancer is kind of similar to this adult cancer, and this child's only about this size. So what we're going to do is we'll reduce the dose of this treatment, and we're just going to give them an adult treatment when the cancer is completely different. And using adult protocols on these children is horrible. That's, again, why we need to focus our research on childhood cancers, because they're different. They aren't adult cancers.
That's right. And, for really, really deadly ones, like the brain tumors, and I always bring up DIPG because that's my thing, but it's, it's responsible for most of the deaths, right? And the area of the brain where it is very, very, very difficult to access. So it kind of, the merit of this kind of research has two frontiers, not only oncology, but also just neurosurgery. It's amazing what they can do. In Bristol, in England, Dr. Gill in the UK at the University of Bristol does this incredible microcatheter surgery with robotics from Renishaw Incorporated. And they were a subject of the show a couple of times, with different, one of the founders of the foundations that helps kids get there. And then the mom of a girl who's actually going through their treatments right now. But even in the UK, they're the same challenges. A child isn't allowed with DIPG to use that until they've used every other possible. It's like, this is a terminal brain cancer. The longer you wait, like you were just saying, the longer you wait, the less time you're going to have, the harder it is to treat, But it's really hard. It's really hard to treat. The laws around treating children are very difficult, of course, and rightly so, because these are children and we're experimenting. But the real research, research into causes and conditions, oh my gosh, could we do some of that? That would be really nice. Is it always about you have to develop this drug that's going to be marketed to millions and make tons of money quickly, instead of why aren't we investigating a field of research that's going to bring about not only a breakthrough, but that creates new jobs, new everything. I mean, there are applications in multiple fields. I just don't understand the resistance, except resistance to change and the few who are in the most power, making the most money, being threatened somehow. I mean, that's always such a stupid excuse to thwart progress.
You take a look at the money factor in there, and they sit there and they may say, well, there's not enough money to be made at this. Well, you find a cure.
I know,
people will pay anything for that. These families bankrupt themselves. They'll spend anything to keep their child alive. They'll do anything to keep their child alive. It's quit making it about the money, and let's start making it about life.
Exactly. And this isn't the only area where that's an issue in our world, but I'll tell you what, it's a rallying point. I think change can really begin with our kids, and it should begin with our kids. That's my whole deal.
Everybody says the children are our future, yet we don't want to invest in that.
I know. I have to laugh because it's so ridiculous.
What are we afraid of? Are we afraid that we find the cause, we find the cure for at least one cancer? I heard that if they could find a treatment for DIPG, that they could probably cure 95% of all brain tumors.
I agree.
In adults as well.
I believe it. Well, most oncologists agree that if we unlocked the secrets of these really resistant cancers that are always the pediatric ones, that invariably we're going to find our whole understanding of nature, of biology, of everything is going to get bumped up a quantum leap, but we won't invest in that.
It drives us nuts. But you know what? We keep the voice going. We keep on getting louder. And I can tell you this, from when I started 12 years ago, this voice has gotten a lot bigger, a lot stronger, and I'm talking collectively. I'm not talking mine. Mine has gotten more hoarse as I go along. But seriously, the amount of people and awareness is really moved up, which is a good thing, but it's still not moving fast enough.
It's our hope. It's our only hope. And one of my major questions to you is going to be, what changes have you seen in the landscape of advocacy and relations with different agencies and public awareness, and how have things changed since you first got involved?
Well, certainly, just purely from my own event, going from 30 to over 500, and seeing how many more events come online, it's certainly moving forward as far as education and awareness goes. CureFest has been a big part of things. Every time somebody messes up and gets us in the news, and I can use an example, Delaney Clement's girlfriend, I can't remember her name. That's really bad. Any case, when she shaved her head at the private school and got kicked out of private school, that went international. That got on the Today Show. And every time somebody does something that scoffs our kids that are fighting something, or some public figure's child gets diagnosed with cancer, it makes international news. Look at Chris Angel, the magician in Vegas. His son got diagnosed with leukemia 6 months ago or so. He showed up at the St. Baldrick's event in Las Vegas and cut a check for $100,000.
Oh, God bless him.
But would that have happened had his child not been diagnosed? Probably not.
Yeah, because you really wouldn't. Most people just turn away because they don't really want to know. But it's becoming more and more. I mean, the degrees of separation are getting smaller and smaller, I think. And the more we insist and stand there for it, and not, oh, I'm going to shrink back because so and so doesn't think, this won't go with their agenda. This is my issue right now. We gotta move forward anyway, because it's our lives, it's our children's lives. It matters. Right now matters.
We take the political correctness, throw it out the door, and make a difference.
Oh, I love it. I will quote you on that. Is that okay?
Sure.
I love that. That's beautiful. So what would you say to those people who don't have it in them really to be out there with it, to, be an activist or to get out there and do something like at the events? What should they know, and how could they be supportive in a quieter way?
First I'll always, supporting the right organizations that are doing, the money's going in the right place. Jack's Angels, Alex's Lemonade Stand, St. Baldrick's Foundation. Do your research on your organizations before you donate, because a lot of the organizations that are out there, the money's not going where you think it is. And if you want the value for your buck, donate to the organization that is doing the right thing. Another thing that is, if you can't donate that, donating blood products at your children's hospital or your blood banks or whatever, being a blood donor is huge, 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 because when these kids are going through treatment, especially neuroblastoma, their platelets get knocked to crap, and that's part of their defense mechanism from hemorrhaging. And you donate blood products, you save a life.
Absolutely.
And I think that's hugely important.
And I love that you do that, and that you are like the number in the top 12 donors in the country. So all of you with, O negative blood, I have O negative blood. Okay, I can give my blood to anyone. I can only take my blood. If you have, but any blood type that you are, please give, because, these hospitals often are short.
And
can't afford
the children's, the children's hospital that I donate at, they're at 98% self-sufficient because they have their own donation center there in the hospital.
Wow.
And so they don't have to purchase from a second party. So it's great.
Well, Paul, thank you so much for coming on the show with me today. You've made my day, and I hope that you've made someone's day out there. Please know, everyone, that your voice counts. Please use it. Be a powerful force for good. It's been my pleasure to share with you today, and I thank you. Thank you, Paul, and God bless your family, and God bless all of you out there.
For more about Janet Demeter and her mission, visit jacksangels.org. As founder and president, Janet strives to assure that children with cancer and their parents have a voice, raising awareness for the need to prioritize our children in the quest for a